Okay, so in this video I'm just going to look at the application of hire purchase. I'm going to look at it in a general way, and if you want to look at actual examples, please go through the slideshow, and you're always welcome to ask, WhatsApp, email, Teams. Those are the platforms that you can contact me on. So if we have time, depending on the length of the video, maybe we will go through one example. So hire purchase is when we buy things. And I say things because it's stuff like when we buy things on credit from Macro or Game or Hi-Fi Corporation, any of those kinds of things, okay? And it will always be simple interest. So I won't tell you it's simple interest, but I will tell you I bought it on hire purchase. And that immediately means you should know that it's simple interest. So, and that is why I have now put the simple interest formula there, because I know that is what I will be dealing with eventually. But I'm not just going to jump straight in and start substituting in values, because I first have to consider whether or not a deposit was made. So most places where you put things on credit, they expect a deposit, because if you take that item and you pay nothing, they still want to get something out of it. So they still want you to feel a little bit of a pinch, okay? So I want you to imagine that you are going to, let's say, the Apple Store, and you ask them if you can get an iPhone on hire purchase, and they go no problem, but they want a 10% upfront, so they must take out 10% cash right there and then, and the rest of it, so remember you've just paid 10%, now the rest of it becomes what we take the loan on. So we call that the loan amount. So before we can even go and decide what the loan amount is, it's going to be the price of the product minus the deposit that you pay. Remember, deposit is a value in money, so it's a rand amount, and that will give you your loan amount that you take. And now this loan amount becomes the p-value in our simple interest formula. So the loan amount is what goes into my formula. So loan amount, and it's still 1 plus I times N. So very commonly what happens is, let's take our iPhone, let's make up an amount. iPhone, let's say 18,000 Rand. Let's say we are going to pay 10% deposit, just like we did. So landing, I'm doing an example anyway, because I do find it is the best, but generally we would deal with all hire purchases in the same way we're dealing with this one. And then they tell you, let's say 20.75% percent per annum interest. And let's say the typical amount of 3 years. So the interest and the years that you are paying this loan back on is all dependent on what the contract is between you and the iStore. But these are pretty much spot on of what you can expect. Yes, the interest rate is high because they take advantage of people who buy things on credit, because people can't wait. So they take advantage of that. Just give me a second while I just rearrange my screen. Okay, so I've just rearranged my screen. So getting back to what we've done, there's just one other thing I want to mention here, is how do we actually calculate that deposit value? Well, the deposit value is always the deposit percentage of the price of the product. So let's look at an actual calculation where we put all of this into practice. So let's start. I go to the iPhone counter. I want the iPhone. It's going to cost 18,000 Rand if I have to pay everything right there and then. Obviously, I don't have that kind of money, and I doubt you have that kind of money, so we ask if we can get it on credit. They say no problem, but you have to pay 10% deposit, and then your interest will be 20.75% per annum, and you'll pay it off for 3 years. So before you even get to leave that store with your iPhone, you have to pay 10%. So my first calculation is always calculating what is the deposit rand amount. Well, it's 10% of 18,000. So before I can even leave with that phone, I have to pay 1,800 rand. Now, they're not just going to give me the phone for 1,800 rand and write off the rest. They expect you to go into a loan agreement for the rest of the amount. Does it make sense that you take a loan on 18,000 rand if you already paid 1,800 rand? Of course not. You're not going to pay more on a loan or take bigger loan than you have to, okay? So the first thing we have to do now is go and calculate what the loan amount is. So the loan amount will be my price of the product, which was 18,000, minus my deposit, which is 1,800. So the loan amount that I'm actually going to take, oh, and I went and made it a lot bigger than it should have been. So 18,000 rand minus 1,800 should be 16,200. And that is the loan that I'm taking, 16,200. And when I go and calculate what I have to pay back, I'm going to use my formula. A equals loan amount, which is your P, 1 plus I times N. Remember, it's hire purchase, so it has to be simple interest. So I took a loan of 16,200. I don't want to pay the deposit again. And I have an interest of 20.75%. So in decimal form, that's what it looks like. And I'm doing it over 3 years. Be careful, sometimes they try and trick you and put it in months. So always convert it to years if your interest is in years, okay? And I just put it into my calculator, so 16,200 timesing it with 1 plus 0.2075 times 3. And I get an amount of, and you should be doing this with me. If you don't, then you're not taking opportunity to practice. So I get a loan amount which includes the interest of 26,284 rand and 50 cents. Now before I go and calculate what the monthly amount is, I can already ask some questions. I can ask you how much interest must be paid. Once again, total payback minus the loan will give me my interest. So in this case, the interest that I am paying is the 26,284 rand and 50 cents minus 16,200, and I would land up paying 10,084 rand and 50 cents more than if I just bought it cash. Remember, this doesn't even include the deposit that I put down. So moral of the story, always try and do cash. But unfortunately, that's not the reality. So let's continue with our question. So now I want to know what is the monthly amount that I'm expected to pay. Monthly amount? Well, if it's 3 years, how many months is that? Once we know that, we just take out 26,284 rand and 50 cents and we divide it by the number of months. 3 years, 36 months. On my calculator, and I get that I need to pay these people, the iPhone store people, 730 rand and 13 cents every month for 3 years, for 36 months. Now, there are some additional questions that I could ask on this. I could add insurance, so a monthly insurance amount. So I would just add the insurance onto this monthly amount here. I can ask you how much interest is paid for 1 year, because remember this interest is for all 3 years. So then I would divide this interest by 3. And that is pretty much what I can ask. Now, the last thing I can ask you, and let's be very careful because the wording is what gives it away. They ask you, what is the total cost of purchase? Total cost of purchase will be your deposit plus your loan repayment. Loan repayment is the one that includes the interest. So you want to know all the money that you've had to take out of your pocket to pay for this iPhone. So if it was 1,800 Rand for the deposit and 26,284 Rand and 50 cents for the loan plus interest, this thing that was going to cost me 18,000 Rand is now going to cost, and you should calculate it, going to cost me 28,084 Rand and 50 cents. And there you have it. That would be the final amount that you forked out for that iPhone. So let's just do a very quick recap. We still have a few minutes before the video decides to cut off. So we started off with the fact that it was a hire purchase question. Hire purchase is always simple interest. Before we can just jump into the formula, we need to consider whether there's a deposit or not. A deposit is always a percentage of the price of your product, okay? And to get what your loan will be is your price of your product minus your deposit. Once you've got the loan amount, we can now put that into my formula, my simple interest formula. And then we looked at an example of buying it iPhone on hire purchase. Then I went on to ask questions like, what is the total interest that I paid? Well, it will be the loan repayment minus the loan taken, and that's my interest. I also could ask you what it is I have to pay per month, and that will be divided by the number of months that the loan is taken for. And then I also said that maybe we want to add an insurance amount per month. So as always, look at those words very carefully. Then the last thing we need to look at was the total cost of purchase. So that is every single cent that you put towards buying the product. So that includes your deposit and your loan with its interest. I hope that is a little bit clearer now.